Alrighty, welcome to another video here on the Strength Culture YouTube channel. Today we're going to be discussing how to build a Google Sheet that utilizes an RPE chart to prescribe back off percentages as a result of predicted daily max. So this is what it will look like here. A typical prescription that we would have here would be 5 total sets of 1 count pause bench press. We have the first set being a top triple at an RPE 8, and then we have 4 back off sets of 5 at 77.5% of the predicted daily max. The athlete would come in here and put in their weight, 200 for a set of 3 reps at an RPE of 8. We then have this calculator that calculates the predicted daily max at 233 based off this input from the athlete, which gives you a predicted daily max in actual usable formatting as 232.5, and then we get the actual prescription for the back off loads. At Strength Culture, we use a 2.5 plus minus percentage for the low and high end of the back off. As most people know, we are heavily influenced by Mike Teixeira and reactive training systems. So we do believe that some fluctuations in the prescription are important for the athlete to manage themselves. So this is how we would typically have this set up. And I get asked regularly how I have built this. So today, this is what the video will be, is how to build this into a Google Sheet. And obviously, as you can see here, if the athlete made that an absolute grinder, it will drop the back off percentages, because the predicted daily max obviously fluctuates between, depending on what inputs we get here. 210 would bring this up, 190 would bring this back down. So I'm going to show you how to do this. But before I go through that, I just want to have a big shout out to Bryce Lewis from the Strength Athlete, because approximately 4 years ago, I watched these 2 videos, and I highly recommend you watch them yourself if you haven't already and you're interested in this sort of stuff. But Bryce Lewis put these up for free use of how to build Excel basics and how to build your own spreadsheets for Excel for a strength coach. So obviously I am going to copy Bryce Lewis. So please go and check out Bryce Lewis if you haven't already looked at these 2 videos. Obviously I'm going to be doing it with Google Sheets because that is how we use it at Strength Culture. Alrighty, so now we are actually going to look at how to build out this spreadsheet so that we can use RPE charts to not only predict daily maxes for your athletes, but also to prescribe back off percentage relative to the predicted daily max, which is important because we do believe that athletes need some sort of variance on the day-to-day training, and we do believe in RPE-based training, and this is how we have it set up. So I've built here just a pretty typical prescription of a spreadsheet. We have the red zone here, which is the prescribed loads from the coach. We have this orange zone that obviously correlates with this orange zone being the predicted daily max, where in here we will have the back off percentage weight. And then we have the green zone for the completed reps from the athlete themselves. Finally, we have this here, which is Mike Teixeira and Reactive Training Systems RPE chart. I would highly recommend using this chart when trying to work out percentage or predicted daily maxes for your athletes, because it does take into consideration a lot of data collated from the Reactive Training Systems guys, and we do believe it's quite accurate, and we've had some great success using this chart. So I would recommend using this. But let's get underway with how we would build this thing out so that we can actually use it in the way that we had it shown earlier in the video. So ultimately, this is the prescription. We have the back squat. We have 4 total sets, the top set being a top set of 2 at an RPE of 8, and then we have 3 remaining sets at a 0.8 percentage of the predicted daily max, and that will be spat out here in this orange zone. So let's assume that our athlete absolutely nailed this, and we got exactly what was prescribed. We hit a top set of 200 kilos for 2 reps at an RPE of 8. So now we have to build the main formula, which will be utilizing the RPE chart and how that will then populate depending on the data that we put in the green zone being what the athlete actually completed for the day. So the formula we're using is VLOOKUP, and we have 4 data ranges that we need to input. You can actually see here with Google Sheets, it actually shows you like how to use the formula. So I'd recommend using that in your first few times, but pretty much it's pretty basic. The first data point we have to do is what is the first thing that the formula wants to look up in the first column that we select in our data range. And for that, it's going to be the actual completed RPE of the set. So for us here, that is going to be this cell H3. So the data point will be correlative to this input. So we have an RPE of 8 here. So this formula will look down this until it gets to 8. It will see that, and then it will come across and find the correct percentage for the total number of reps that were completed. The second thing that we need to input into the formula is the range itself. So this being the range is what data are we actually looking for. Finally, it is what is actually being searched in terms of which column do we need. And the column actually correlates with the reps. So we're going to use this cell, prescribed reps, plus 1, because obviously we want to overlook this first cell. So even though the reps are 2, it needs to be for a 2 rep set, it actually needs to look in column 3. So it's the 2 reps plus 1. Whereas if this had a 5, the plus 1 would mean that it would be in the 6th column, which would be this one here, being column 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then it correlates to the correct RPE and prescribed rep. Finally, we have to put this last piece in, which I actually don't know what it does, but we need to put false in for this to work. So make sure you have false there written at the end. But now we will have the correct data point within our range being taken and placed here in this white cell. So obviously now we need to use this percentage to actually get the predicted daily max. And that one's actually a pretty basic formula. We're just going to choose the weight we selected and divide it by the data point there. And here we have our first predicted daily max. When we hit 200 weights, for a 2 rep set, the RPE of 8, we get a 224.7 kilogram predicted daily max using this data sheet down here, this RPE chart. We actually want to change this though, because 0.7 is obviously too difficult, and for anybody that's trained athletes for any number of years will realize that somebody will ask, how do I load 224.7? So the way we will change that is a simple MROUND formula, which is literally just MROUND the data point, and then we just put in the nearest factor, which will be 2.5, because we want to use kilograms on the weight, on the bar. If you're an American coach, you could put a 5 in here, so it actually correlates to 5-pound increases. But here we have 225.0. And now we have our predicted daily max, and we can change any of these variables here, or not the reps, the completed reps, but any of the variables here within weight and RPE. And we can get an adjustment of this. So if I make this set harder, it is going to bring down the predicted daily max. If I make this set easier for the athlete, it's actually going to increase the predicted daily max. In the same breath, if I make the weight higher, it's going to bring the predicted daily max up. And if I make the weight lower, it's going to bring it down. So ultimately, this predicted daily max fluctuates with the athlete on the day. So now the final piece that we need to build is the back off percentage. And this one is really easy. We just choose the predicted daily max and we times it by the percentage, and that would equal 170. So our back off percentage load off as 80% of the predicted daily max is 170 kilograms. The final little bit here that we need to understand is for me to drag this down, it won't actually work, because when you drag a formula or drag a cell, it actually drags all of the data points down too. So now these reference the wrong cell being over here. So we actually need to lock that first cell, and we're going to lock the column being I and the data point being 3. So it's going to lock this cell, and as I drag this down, we now have our back off percentage. So now the athlete is going to hit that 170 for 5 reps, and the RPE points can be filled out as he goes through the training session. Let's say he took a shorter break, hit the 5, but then that last one was an RPE of 9. And now we have a complete RPE based prescription with fluctuations off the projected daily max dependent on the RPE selected and the weight selected of the athlete. And this is literally how we have built this. So if we come back to our example here from a strength culture spreadsheet, we'll put the same things in here. We have a predicted daily max of 232.5. This is the white cell over here, just with the next formula included as well. So now we have our prescription. Again, this is a 2.5% drop off from this, and this is a 2.5% increase. So we have a range that we allow our athletes to work in. We often recommend that you hit the prescribed load on your first set and then make adjustments from there if we are too close to the RPE 9 range. We want most of our back off work to be completed within the 7 to 8.5 range for our athletes, depending on the time of training year. So we obviously have our own sort of rules that we use with our athletes, but this is how this would build out. I would then hide this column so the athlete doesn't see it. And now we have the complete RPE prescription here. For those of you that want to know where our RPE chart, it's actually referencing off its own spreadsheet here that is then hidden. So that is hidden the whole time, and that stays there the entire time. And our spreadsheet just calculates off that projected daily max. Hopefully that was helpful for you. Hopefully you can utilize this strategy with your athletes. It takes a little bit of time, particularly if you want to build out like a proper spreadsheet that has multiple weeks and multiple areas that you calculate loads from. But we do think it's very valuable, particularly if you're trying to build a very professional service for your athletes and clients, because ultimately we do run a business here, so we do need to show that we care for what is occurring. The final little tip would be just add a little bit of color to your spreadsheets. They make it look a lot better. It's a lot easier to explain to clients, hey, we prescribe in the blue zone. You use the green zone to complete the reps and the weights and all that sort of stuff. It just makes everything a little bit easier. So that's another little tip for you. But obviously, thank you very much to Bryce Lewis for these two, because you inspired me 4 or 5 years ago by watching these, and now hopefully I can add to the Google Sheet strength coach world with my own here. So thank you very much. If you have any questions, drop them down below. Hopefully this helped, and we'll see you next time.